Steelers, Seahawks, crossover Thursday. Which offense has showed its true self? We'll talk about that here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers. He's Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks, and we are here previewing the Week 2 matchup between the Pittsburgh Steelers and Seattle Seahawks here on Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And today's episode, as all Crossover Thursday episodes, are brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. We got Corbin Smith from Locked On Seahawks here. These two teams looked a little bit different in their week 1 showings. The Seahawks in more of a defensive struggle they fell just short of. The Steelers in more of an offensive shootout that they came out in the positive sign of. And I think those offenses and their new quarterbacks are the kind of the story of the week. Did they see the real versions of them, Corbin? What do you think what did you glean from just seeing Sam Darnold in his first week and the potential of him having a better showing than what him and the whole offense was able to put together?
Yeah, I'm going against the grain on this. I know a lot of Seahawks fans do not agree with me on this, but I thought Sam Darnold was the least of Seattle's problems this past week. In fact, I thought he looked pretty darn good for most of the game. Were there a couple throws that he would have liked to have back? Sure. But he completed almost 70% of his passes, didn't have any turnover-worthy plays. He was getting the ball out of his hands quickly. He was throwing with great anticipation and touch. And I felt like more than anything that the offensive game plan hurt him and just the entire offensive group. I didn't understand the lack of 2 tight end sets, which has always been a staple for Clint Kubiak. And they have like 12 tight ends in their roster. Why are you not using them? It didn't make any sense to me. And they called 1 play action pass the entire game, even though they ran the ball 26 times. And, it wasn't like a great game running the ball, but they were effective enough that they should have been able to run more play action off it, which really plays into Sam Darnold's strengths as a passer, especially when you can sprinkle in some bootlegs with him. So I felt like they didn't do him any favors with the game plan they had. And they've got to do a better job from that sense to really maximize his ability, the personnel around him. But I thought Sam Darnold actually looked pretty good. So I have optimism coming out of that game, even though they only put up 13 points. I can't see Clint Kubiak calling that poor of a game. Again, if he does, then the heat's going to get turned on quickly in Seattle. But I don't see that happening again. They have a more Darnold-friendly game plan to let him be able to get the ball pushed downfield a little bit more, get some of those bootlegs, a little more play action. I think that Sam Darnold's going to be just fine. So I'm not worried about it at all. But you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers standpoint, everybody's like, did Aaron Rodgers find the fountain of youth going out and throwing 4 touchdowns against the New York Jets?
And see, that's the thing. I think it was less the fountain of youth and more just the guile and experience that he has always had throughout his career and playing in a system that is not of his own making. I think that like in this system, Arthur Smith has designed the passing offense to work for Aaron Rodgers, but they haven't gone out and brought in, 3 different guys that he specifically wanted. It's, hey, Aaron, just come in, do what we're giving you. We're giving you these looks, do what you can with them. And in week 1, he did it for 4 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. He was pretty efficient in doing so, completing 22 of 30 passes, 244 yards. A pass rating of 136.7. He was able to move the ball around. And it's also impressive because he did that without a run game. The Steelers' run game really never took off. Their leading running back, Jaylen Warren, averaged 3.4 yards per carry. The next guy was 2.7 yards per carry. And he was under pressure a lot. He took 4 sacks in this last game, which is something that cannot happen. And we'll break more of that down as the show goes on. But I was just impressed by how Aaron Rodgers was able to see the field, conduct the offense, and keep their heads above water. Because when the Jets were hitting on big plays, which we did not think that they'd be able to do, I thought everyone was saying, "Hey, take the under on this game. Both offenses are going to start slow." They came out guns a-blazing. But I think the big thing this week is they need to be able to show that they can win in different ways. Now, fortunately for Aaron Rodgers, and I think part of what can help them do this is they scored each of their 4 touchdowns with different players: Jonnu Smith, Calvin Austin, Jaylen Warren, and I'm blanking on a fourth there. But each time it was a different Ben Skoranek, but each time it was a different player. So it's not like you can lock in on one player, one concept that absolutely killed. But I do think that there's one concept, and we'll get more into this when we talk about the run games on both sides of the ball later in the show. But you talked about the Seahawks not being willing to use play action. That was something the Steelers did a lot and did very well against the Jets. They used play action. They put Aaron Rodgers on the move sometimes, and that allowed him to, he's not going to be a guy that uses his legs to hurt you, but he can use his legs to step into a space where he can make the throw he wants. And he did that several times. And that's what was setting up a lot of their bigger plays. But here's the thing. If you can't run the ball, if you're averaging 3.4 yards per carry with your top running back, eventually teams won't bite on play action. And then you're not throwing to wide open guys that are in the intermediate part of the field and then getting good yak. So I think the Steelers offense, as well as Aaron Rodgers played in this last game, and he needs to play well again in this game, I think a big part of what the Steelers offense has to show is they have to find other ways to win that don't require Aaron Rodgers being a guy that always guides the offense and always makes the play. Because if they do that, eventually teams are going to figure some stuff out, and they're going to take away those things, and they're going to force you to have to be able to run the ball.
Yeah, I think that plays into, coming out of this first game for the Seahawks, as far as defensively, I thought they played a really good game for the most part. They had a few penalties that killed them. They had a few big plays downfield with Riq Woolen. More on that in a little bit, but had a couple plays that got away from them at the end of the game, but they held Christian McCaffrey to 3.1 yards per carry. They were able to get some pressure on Brock Purdy to the point that now Brock Purdy might be missing a couple of games for the 49ers. They got some big hits on him, but they had to do that by sending pressure from the second and third level. This team has got to be able to, with the talent they've got up front, they've got to be able to speed up that clock for Aaron Rodgers with some 4-man rushes in this game. Be more consistent in doing that. And the fact the Jets were able to get pressure and sacks on Aaron Rodgers, it should provide optimism that the Seahawks can do it with Leonard Williams and Jaron Reed. And they're going to probably have Uchenna Nwosu back this week for his debut this season. So all the weapons, they've got DeMarcus Lawrence. They've got a lot of pieces there. Those guys up front, though, they need to be able to create pass rush without having to blitz. Mike McDonald likes to send extra guys. They're going to keep doing that, but that front line needs to get after Aaron Rodgers, which is a big part of the reason they had so much success against him last year, albeit when he was with the Jets.
Yeah, and certainly, and that was the thing that really got after the Steelers. The Steelers' offensive line, a young group for the most part, they were in position a lot, but they lost their one-on-ones quite a bit, especially Broderick Jones on the left tackle. Trey Fautanu lost a couple at right tackle. If the Seahawks can get in the backfield, it disrupts everything, and then Aaron Rodgers can't be as successful. But that is going to be a major factor in this game for sure as the match. We'll talk about other matchup big factors that we'll be exploring all throughout this upcoming matchup here on Crossover Thursday from the Locked On Podcast Network. Locked On Steelers, Locked On Seahawks, Chris Carter, Corbin Smith. Stick with us. We still have plenty to discuss. But first, I remind you, this show is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS top safety pick awards than anyone else. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Nappa leather upholstery. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like the players, they sweat through every detail at Mazda, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Today's episode is also brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. It's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest, some days on the course or off it, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized. I'm not a golfer, but I do feel on my game when I go to Topgolf and I'm able to hit that back net with the driver. Golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. The great ginger lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the bev cart. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to get 20% off your order. The offers only valid through September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion-flavored 5-Hour Energy shots today. We're back here on Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers here with Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks. Corbin, let's move to other key matchups here. There's, of course, the key matchup that everyone's asking about because we just talked to DK Metcalf himself Wednesday in the Steelers locker room, and there were like 6 straight questions of, are you excited to play the Seahawks? And he was kind of being like, okay, we get it. I should be excited to play the Seahawks. He, of course, being the consummate professional he is, played it down. He just said, hey, I know guys over there. But this is a big matchup in this game because the Seahawks, they have their own big names, cornerback in Devin Witherspoon. But you were telling me before the show, there might be some changes or at least some challenges to what they do else at cornerback because Riq Woolen was a guy that I was looking at like, hey, could him and Witherspoon switch off with DK Metcalf? What's the situation going on there at corner?
Yeah, that's anyone's guess because Mike McDonald today, we asked him about Riq Woolen starting on Sunday, and he said, we'll see. So that was not the most definitive answer that you're going to get on that front. And Seahawks fans know from the end of the game on Sunday of the 49ers, Woolen was in position to make plays on both of these miscues. 45-yard throw to Ricky Pearsall that he did not get beat on a double move. He was still in his hip pocket, but he just seemed to lose the ball. He mistimed the ball, and Pearsall ended up getting a couple steps on him for a 45-yard gain. And then game-winning touchdown by fourth-string tight end Jake Tongas. That never should have happened. Riq Woolen, basically Brock Purdy gift-wrapped a game-winning interception for him, and he didn't aggressively play the football. Tongas jumps in front of him and swipes the ball away. Game-winning touchdown for the 49ers. Instead, not finishing those plays while Josh Jobe, their third corner, had a fantastic game, had an interception, 5 targets, 1 reception for 1 yard, had a couple run stuffs. I mean, he played an outstanding game. And Mike McDonald really likes this kid because he has a high football IQ. He's tough. He's physical. He does things the right way. It sounds to me like there's a very real chance Josh Jobe is going to be starting with Devin Witherspoon and not Riq Woolen. Now, you will still see Riq Woolen out there because without Nicky Manwari, their standout rookie safety, he's dealing with a high ankle sprain, not going to play this week, barring a miracle. They're talking about injured reserve with him, so I really don't think he's going to play this week. But without him out there as their big slot, Devin Witherspoon has to move back inside and play in the slot position, which means your 2 boundary corners are going to be Woolen and Jobe. They're going to be on the field together unless they decide to put somebody else in for him at corner. I don't see it going down that road, but that is certainly something to watch because Josh Jobe has earned those opportunities, but Josh Jobe is not a 4-2 guy, not even a 4-3 guy. Him against DK Metcalf seems like that could be a real mismatch, whereas Riq Woolen has the size and the speed to be able to go against his former teammate and match up that really no other corners in the league offer.
Now, that's going to be interesting to see who draws DK Metcalf. But one thing I'll say, too, is the Steelers are not afraid to match up their other guys with other guys in the secondary because Calvin Austin really came on strong last week. He's kind of emerged as the Steelers wide receiver 2. He caught 4 of 6 targets for 70 yards and a touchdown against the Jets, beating Brandon Stevens quite consistently. He's a 4-3 speed guy. He has speed. He's smaller, but he showed the ability to go up and get the football, win combat catches. And the Steelers are going to deploy their multi-tight end sets. There were plenty of sets where they brought out Pat Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith, but also those two with Darnell Washington, their 6'7" guy out of Georgia that some say could play left tackle if he really wanted to. What do the Seahawks have in order to slow down a tight end heavy attack if the Steelers wanted to focus on their tight ends? Because I asked Aaron Rodgers about the potential or the advantages of using bigger, talented tight ends as decoys. And he like dismissed the idea. He was like, they are not decoys. They are our weapons. And so I think that they're the Steelers. They didn't overly target their tight ends last week. Freiermuth caught 3 passes for 28. Johnny Smith caught 5 passes for 15. Both got touchdowns. But the Steelers are very confident about their tight ends. How does that match up with the other cover men that will be in the Seahawks?
And this is where that Eamon injury kind of looms large, because last week it was very apparent. I mean, he got hurt in the first drive of the game, unfortunately, and it was on a tackle for loss. So it was a splash play that he got hurt on, and you got to see just what a 6'3", 220, and I think he's more like 6'4", 235, to be honest with you. He's a massive human being that can move like a deer, and not having him out there, they lucked out in the sense that George Kittle went out with his own injury shortly after that. But it was clear that Nick Eamon, their game plan was, we are going to put you on George Kittle with your size and your athleticism. They would be doing something similar against Pittsburgh's tight end in this game. And now they're going to have to shift their focus. Now, DeAnthony Bell previously played in the AFC North with the Cleveland Browns. He's on their practice squad. I think he's going to be available for this game, either getting signed to the roster or as a promotion off the practice squad. He is a guy that can play a little bit in the box. Maybe they use him some. Julian Love has played up against tight ends before, as is Kobe Bryant. But those guys just aren't as big, not near as big as what Nick Eamon is. And Devin Witherspoon, you're probably going to want to get him lined up against somebody like Austin with a taller guy that he can run with. So I'm curious to see. And then the linebackers in the middle. Ernest Jones had an incredible pick this last week against San Francisco. A really underrated player, one of the best inside linebackers out there. Their other linebacker, Tyrese Knight, I think is a good young player, but he missed almost all of training camp. And last week it showed. Is he able to get his feet underneath more? If not, we might see Drake Thomas, their other linebacker, out there. So there are some questions there, how they're going to handle tight ends because of some of the injuries and guys coming back from injuries and the way that they're using that rotation. I want to shift the focus, though, to Pittsburgh. It's easy to look at TJ Watt. We can talk to him ad nauseum. He scares me anytime the Seahawks are playing the Pittsburgh Steelers. But getting Cam Hayward, Benton, some of those guys in the middle, that is, to me, still the biggest issue the Seahawks have to deal with. Their interior offensive line. I think Gray Zabel is going to be a really good player, but he's a rookie. This is going to be his second start. Jalen Sundell at center. This is going to be his second NFL start. And then at right guard, Anthony Bradford has started a lot of games, but he just has not been able to translate his training camp and preseason stuff to regular season, and he had some struggles last week. That feels like, to me, a matchup, and maybe from Pittsburgh's standpoint, one that they can get an edge here going against that interior offensive line for the Seahawks that still has question marks, even if it looks like it is an upgraded group to where it was a year ago.
It'll be something the Steelers try to take advantage of in more ways than one, not just with Cam Hayward and Keanu Benton. Keanu Benton, I thought, had a rough week against the run with the Jets, but that's a guy who can slip past you in pass rush and create pressures. But the Steelers were moving their guys around. TJ Watt, who barely flipped sides last year, was flipping sides against the Jets because they're trying to make you guess where he's at more often in games. And they also moved around his colleague, Alex Highsmith, the opposite outside linebacker. He had 8 pressures on Justin Fields in this game and a sack. I think what Sam Darnold's going to see, and the Steelers, I think they were a little bit more tentative with what they were doing because they knew that Justin Fields' legs could hurt them. I mean, they practiced against him all last year, so they knew, and they saw him firsthand. They know how dangerous he is. But I think that they're willing to say, hey, Sam Darnold, you're not going to beat us with your legs. We're going to send heat. We're going to try to send different pressures, move guys around, and make it tougher on your offensive line and make you have to get the ball out quicker. So I do think the Steelers are going to test this, but it's not just going to be TJ Watt going up against Abraham Lucas. It's not just going to be Alex Highsmith going against Charles Cross. It's going to come down to Zabel and Sundell and Bradford being able to communicate on the interior. I also foresee if the Steelers, and we'll talk more about the run game in the next segment because I do think that's also crucial for both sides in this matchup. But if the Steelers can get to passing downs, like bona fide passing downs that they know the Seahawks have to throw down the field, they're going to send heat. And that was something that they really didn't get to do too much of against the Jets because of their ability to run the ball. But the Steelers want to be a downhill attacking defense that plays aggressive with who they're sending and then tells their secondary, where they've invested in guys like Jalen Ramsey, now Joey Porter Jr., who didn't practice on Wednesday, might not make this game, though Mike Tomlin said he was optimistic for him to make it. But they still have guys like Darius Slay, Brandon Eccles, Juan Thornhill. They added Jabril Peppers to the mix here. They have guys that they're going to be confident with that can just bump and run or play effective zones. That's going to be a big factor too in this game. Trying to be more aggressive with how they attack that offensive line.
Yeah, that is a very true story. And I think you could also look at it from a very similar perspective on the other side of the football too, because you mentioned with the youth that Pittsburgh has on that offensive line. I mentioned the defensive line being key for the Seahawks getting pressure. But again, Mike Macdonald likes to send guys. He's going to send Devin Witherspoon. He's going to send Ernest Jones. He's going to send Tyrese Knight. Drake Thomas comes in. He showed it last week. He will send Drake Thomas. He'll send Julian Love, who had a sack this last week. Like, he is going to send people from all over the place. He's going to mix in sim pressures. He's going to mix in fire zones, all kinds of stuff to try to not necessarily confuse Aaron Rodgers, who has seen a little bit of everything, but confuse the offensive line. And then it doesn't matter what the quarterback is seeing. If the offensive line isn't picking stuff up, Aaron Rodgers, even if he thinks he's still fairly nimble for his age, it's going to be a real test for him if they're able to start getting free rushers coming in on those blitzes too. So I expect both defenses, you're going to see plenty of that aggressiveness, especially if they're not getting to the quarterback early with their fronts. I think there's going to be some impatience from both these teams, the guys calling the plays defensively.
Absolutely. And, simulated pressures is the phrase that people use for the fake blitzes that the Seahawks like to use. And that's something that Steelers have talked about quite a bit this week. I think that's going to be a big factor. When we come back, I want to ask Corbin more about the run game on both sides of the ball, because the Steelers got ran over a bit by the Jets rushing offense. And of course, Kenneth Walker comes to town now. But the Steelers also didn't get their run game going. What do the Seahawks do well on run defense? We'll talk about that and get to our final look at Steelers Seahawks right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's Crossover Thursday. Chris Carter, Corbin Smith. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 back in bonus bets to use across the FanDuel app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet, whether it's player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game even more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. And remember to place your first $5 bet, and if you hit, you get $300 in bonus bets only on FanDuel. We're back here on Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Chris Carter, Corbin Smith of Locked On Steelers and Locked On Seahawks. Corbin, neither team really ran the ball at the clip that they wanted to in their last contest. The Seahawks, 12 carries for Charbonnet for 47 yards, less than 4 yards per carry, just under that. Kenneth Walker, 10 carries for 20 yards. The Steelers, not too much, even worse when you look at it. Jalen Warren had 11 carries for 37 yards. Kenneth Gainwell, 7 for 19. The rookie Kenny Johnson only ran it one time for a loss. I want to start with the Seahawks rushing game. What wasn't there and what can be there? Because I've seen Kenneth Walker in person, and I've seen that guy be a bad dude.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because we know what he's capable of. He was 1,000-yard rusher his rookie season, but it has been a really weird year for Ken Walker III. Mm-hmm. He was in and out of practice. They were just doing maintenance with a sore foot throughout training camp, throughout OTAs. And he didn't look like he was ready for regular season football on Sunday.
Oh, wow.
To me, he just looks, not from a health standpoint, he looks like he's running fast. He looks explosive, but he does not look comfortable with Clint Kubiak's offense. And Zach Charbonnet does. Zach Charbonnet, when he was in the game on Sunday, this offense was night and day difference in terms of how they played. And I don't know that necessarily is all on Ken Walker III. He had a lot of runs where the 49ers just sniffed it out. He had nowhere to go. But I'd argued this yesterday on Emerald City Spectrum on my website that, look, you watch the tape, Zach Charbonnet had a couple times where it looked like he was going to be toast in the backfield, but he decisively made cutbacks against the grain and turned negative gains or negative losses into 5-6 yard runs. He had a couple times he did that. Ken Walker III is not doing that because he doesn't seem like he has the feel for the offense. He doesn't have the feel for the scheme. And maybe after a couple games, he's going to get that. Maybe this week even there will be a big jump. It just looked like he was not near as comfortable with this offense as what Zach Charbonnet was. Hence why Charbonnet played 9 more snaps in this game. And there's a lot of people out there, I'm starting to think this too, Zach Charbonnet might be a better fit for this offense because the Shanahan-style scheme, you know this from the early 2000s when it seemed like they could put a busboy in at running back and run for 1,000 yards. They very rarely had 4-2 or 4-3 guys back there or even 4-4 guys. Speed was not a big part of the equation. They wanted guys with vision that understood their blocking schemes and had the feel for when creases were going to open up. And right now, Zach Charbonnet is giving that more than what Ken Walker III is. But Walker is obviously the guy that's got the most juice and the most home run hitting ability there. So they're going to continue to use both those guys. I'm expecting to see a lot more zone this game. They ran 63% of their plays zone last year, but Kubiak was closer to 75% last year in New Orleans. I expect they're going to get more back to their bread and butter because, quite frankly, the blocking on those plays was a lot better than the gap scheme stuff this past week. That's where I think the Seahawks are going to be looking to improve on that front and then hopefully run some darn play action off of it.
I hear you there. I think the Steelers want to do the same thing. Like I said before, Aaron Rodgers was able to throw the ball well, and I think he will be able to throw the ball well for a bit. But the Steelers want to put some good run tape on film because then people will respect their play action more as the year goes on. And I think that's something that they're really looking forward to trying to show Wednesday in the Steelers locker room. I talked to both Broderick Jones and Troy Fautano and Jack Frazier, for that matter, the left tackle, right tackle, and center in that order for the Steelers. And there is a sense of urgency right now with this offensive line to prove they can be a better rushing team. Now, they were also in, kind of some tight spots. They were in a shootout, so they didn't really get to run the ball as much as they wanted. And Aaron Rodgers was just being super efficient. But I do think there's a recognition that, hey, they need to get things going on this offensive line to give space to guys like Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell, because those are two quick, fast guys that you give them a crease, they'll hit it hard, and then they'll get the yards, and that'll set everything else up for the Steelers offense. But that did not happen really much against the Jets, and I think they do need it to start happening soon. If it happens against the Seahawks, great. It'll be another feather in their cap that they can rely upon. It's like, hey, we have this in our bag right now, and to develop it. I think at some point they need this run game to develop for their identity. Period. Whether it's even before they get to Baltimore, before they get to Buffalo, and they have a really serious gauntlet towards the end of the season. They need this run game to manifest. It hasn't yet. I'm not sure if it will fully manifest this week, but they need to see glimpses of it. The way that you're seeing glimpses of Charbonnet.
Yeah, and I look at it from a Seahawks defensive standpoint too. I know Aaron Rodgers threw 4 touchdowns this past week, and I know he was extremely effective. But if I'm the Seahawks, I'm still going into this game saying, look, we're gonna stonewall your run. We are gonna force Aaron Rodgers to show he can do it a second time because we believe we can get after him. We believe we can win in the trenches with our defensive line, and we can get some timely blitzes in there, and we can make life really tricky for this offensive line and consequently for Aaron Rodgers and get him off his pocket a little bit. Maybe force him into some bad decisions, which he had some when they played him in the Jets last year, where they were able to speed the clock up, even for a vet that's seen everything. They were able to do it and frustrate that offensive line. I think the Seahawks are going to come into this game believing, hey, this is a matchup where we do want to put the ball in Aaron Rodgers' court. We believe we have the guys in the back end to be able to play coverage as well. And we like our front 7 against this offensive line. We think we can slow down the run game. We can set the edge. So that is going to be interesting because if the Steelers can get their run game going, then there's a trickle-down effect. But I really think that's how the Seahawks are going to approach this game. and really try to put the ball in Aaron Rodgers' court and say, do it 2 weeks in a row.
And on the flip side, I think the Steelers want to do the same thing to Sam Darnold because though, as you say, he didn't have a terrible game. I think they'd rather him beat them than just being able to run the ball because the Jets ran over the Steelers for most of the game until like the last 2 or 3 drives. If the Steelers can get a better run stuff presence early on, it can put them in a position where they can make the offense more predictable for the Seahawks. That's something they didn't do against the Jets and that they're like talking a lot about doing this week against the Seahawks. So I think that this is going to be a big part of the matchup. If you look at FanDuel right now, FanDuel, by the way, is one of our great sponsors. You can get all their you can get all their information at FanDuel.com, where the odds, ends, and lines. Right now, as of Wednesday evening when we are recording this, the Steelers are 3-point favorites. We know 3 points is usually what goes to the home team. So I think that says that FanDuel sees these two teams as even. Corbin, what do you think about the FanDuel line there?
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that it went up a little bit because I think it was at 2.5 points earlier in the week. And I don't think there's been anything that really would have shifted that in terms of injuries, unless, maybe Nick Eamon-Warry's update that he might be going to injured reserve. Maybe that swung it 0.5 point. I don't know. But I think on paper that these are very similar football teams in terms of overall talent. I would even make an argument, at least from Seattle's defensive perspective, that I think defensively Seattle has a better all-around defense. The biggest question is going to be, can the offense pick it up? Can they move the football and not have a 3-for-10 performance on third down? Are they going to actually run some play action off that run game that they are prioritizing so much? I just think that this is one of those games. Pittsburgh has been a really hard place for Seattle to win at over the years. This is a team that went 7-1 on the road last year. That's not indicative they're going to be that good on the road this year. History says otherwise, but I could see this game going either way. I think that 3-point margin there, I could easily see this being one that ends up being like a 1 or 2 point game with like 2-point conversions mixed in and stuff, because I think it's a very balanced rosters, and being in Pittsburgh maybe plays a little bit to the Steelers, but I think this is going to be a really tight game.
I'm right with you there. It's going to be a tight game, and we'll have more to break down on each of our Friday episodes here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Corbin, thank you for doing Crossover Thursday with me. It's always great to do it with you, sir. We don't get to do these enough considering we're at different conferences. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, on X, Corbin Smith NFL, and you can check out my website. We'll have tons of Seahawks and Steelers content, EmeraldCitySpectrum.com. Just check that out. We'll have some free content up, especially on Friday, Freeview Friday on EmeraldCitySpectrum.com.
Absolutely. He's Corbin Smith. I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. You can find me on all social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, at Carter Critiques. It's always my handle. You can also read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, where I've done a lot of film studies this week. If you want to check up on what the Steelers are doing right and wrong on tape, that's a great place to do it, is the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And as always, like you find Locked On Seahawks, you can find Locked On Steelers on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get either all of Locked On Seahawks or all of Locked On Steelers, depend on what fandom you're just subscribing to. Check out our Friday episodes coming out tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network.